Jacob,
Ben,
how are you doing?
I am doing okay. Although we are going to have to finish up a little early today because I have not one but two funerals to go to.
Ooh.
Yeah. Where were we? We were starting.
I think
chapter
13.
Yes, that's what I thought so too. Anything before we start? Elijah wants us to talk about the book club. People go vote on the book club. Elijah's very excited about his book club. We're going on to the third book soon. We
Mhm.
have Echezi in the audience. This is going to be epic.
Mm-hmm.
Anything you wanted to talk about before we started?
No. I've reviewed last week's material, and I think I read it.
Reviewed last week's material. Who does things like reviewing? And this way we can understand what our sages said. Beinonim ze v'ze shoftan. For an intermediate person, this and this judges that. Perush yetzer tov v'yetzer hara. So when it says ze v'ze, it says this and this. It's talking about the evil inclination and the good inclination. Dichtiv ki ya'amod liyamin avyon lahoshia mishoftei nafsha. And he is quoting from Psalms 109:31. As it is written, he stands at the right hand of the poor man to save him from them that judge his soul. Right? Mishoftei nafsha. Those that judge.
Is that cat or is that?
No, that is my neighbor. I will be right back.
I would have continued, but
Hopefully that's better.
yeah.
Okay. Yes, somebody was hammering outside.
Mhm.
And I hear it more. You hear it more than I do because I have these spiffy new headphones. Okay. V'lo amru zeh v'zeh moshlim chas v'shalom. So it doesn't say that they are ruled moshel, right? So we have different Hebrew roots there. It says shoftan, right? It says it judges them. So why is it using that particular
Verb or like word?
yeah. Ki yesh ezo shlita umemshala leyetzer hara be'ir katana afilu lafi sha'a kala, because if God forbid there should be any form of Shelton or Manshala, right? So Shelton is the same root as Sultan, the Arabic word, and Manshala is the same word that's used for the government in modern Hebrew, right? So if you're being ruled over in the what's called the small city, which is the body, right, by your evil inclination, even for a simple moment, nikra rasha be'ota sha'a. That moment, he's considered a rasha. Yes.
Yeah. No, I was just curious. I need to check it for myself, but didn't it say like that? It mentioned both inclination, that it's not good. V'lo ze v'ze moshlim. By both the good and evil. So is the chas v'shalom, God forbid, is that just referring to the fact that the evil inclination part, obviously?
Yeah.
Okay.
Va'af al pichen. Well, hold on a minute. Ella hayetzer hara eino rak al derech mashal kamo shofet v'dayan ha'omer da'ato b'mishpat. So the Yetzer Hara is regarding a Benoni, right? So when we talk about an intermediate person, that intermediate person simply has as kind of like an advisor, like a dayan, right? So a rabbinic court has 3 dayanim, right? And so in a sense, you can think of it as there's you, and then there's your evil inclination, and there's your good inclination, right? And as long as you're being torn between the two, you're still a Benoni.
Right.
And that's what I always wondered about, like this idea of, hold on, why is Tanya called Sefer Shel Benoni? Why is it a guide how to be a Benoni? It's not a guide how to be a tzaddik. It's a guide how to be a Benoni.
Right. How to tilt things, or how to control the evil inclination, or rule over it.
So yeah,
as opposed to changing the essence, which is what the tzaddik.
Right. So in essence, we seem to want to kind of like at least conquer that part of our Yetzer Hara, so that it's only something that tempts us, and it's not an actually real part of our lives, that it doesn't actually get us to do those evil things that it wants us to do.
Right, in thought, speech, and action.
Correct. ואף על פי כן, יכול להיות שלא יהיה פסק הלכה כך למעשה, right? And even though you have one judge who says in a certain way, that doesn't mean that that's what's going to happen. מפני שיש עוד שופט ודיין החולק עליו, when there's a different judge that's saying no, it should be in a different way. וצריך להכריע ביניהם. And so the person needs to להכריע, how do they translate? Arbitrate. להכריע ביניהם. והלכה כדברי המכריע. And the actual judgment will be like, the final verdict will be like whoever is making that decision between the two of them. In a similar way, in your own self, right? You have your evil inclination and you have your good inclination. And what happens is based on what you decide to do. In a similar way, the evil inclination gives its opinion in the left chamber of the heart. And from there, it goes up into the mind to give you thoughts. And a person's conscience, or a person's good inclination, which has its residence and in the rational mind, right? And so when we talk about Chabad Hasidut, right? What is a basic definition of Chabad Hasidut? It is Moach Sholet al Halev, right? It is that you should be able to become a person whose mind is able to rule over his emotions.
Yeah.
Hamitpashet b'chalal hayamini shebalev, that extends into the right chamber of the heart. Mekom mishkan hayetzer tov, that which is the place where it abides or reveals itself.
Okay, so
yeah, yeah.
I like reviewing these the steps there. So it comes up from the nefesh be'amit, the animal soul. It's like we said it's the left ventricle of the heart.
Yep.
And so it comes from there. So you have a desire that comes from there.
Mm-hmm.
and then it goes into the rational mind where the nefesh eloit
has its source,
its source.
right? So you kind of like think of it like a sort of battle, right? And so you have a source of holiness, which has its source in your brain. Like, this doesn't have to be 100% literal, please.
I'm talking symbolic, and I'm
no.
the name.
I know you are, but I want that to be clear for the peanut gallery. Doesn't mean that we're talking about like necessarily biological things, but so there's this idea of, okay, your godly soul, which has its root in the mind, is able to extend itself into the right ventricle, and even fight its way into the left and completely control you, or the opposite, right? From the left ventricle of the heart, the evil inclination where it finds its source is able to extend itself into the right ventricle, and even up into the brain to cause evil thoughts, right? And so there's think of it as like a tug of war over what your body actually does between these two inclinations.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Okay. Okay. And Lord Harry, it is very nice to have you here, but welcome. Okay. Okay. And the halacha, the actual what it should be, is according to the arbitrator. And who's the arbitrator? That is God himself. Ha'ozro lahayetzer tov. The one who enables, who comes to the aid of the good inclination, because ultimately we believe that it's not a fair fight. It's not a fair fight. Good will always win because good is the side that God's on. Right? Kamamar Rotenu Zechronim Loracha, Ilmale HaKadosh Baruch Hu Ozro, Ein Yachol. If it were not for the help of God, a person could not actually overcome his evil inclination. It is something that is God given, and even the Yetzer Hatov itself, right? It comes like it is a godly soul, and who's going to win a fight between that which is godly and that which is animal, right? V'ha'ezer hi ha'ara shemeir or Hashem al nefesh ha'aloki. And that assistance from God is the shining of the light, the divine light from God on his that illuminates his divine soul. Lihyot lah yitron ushlita al sichlut haksil v'yetzer hara, which is what gives it the superiority and ability to rule over the folly of the fool and the evil inclination. Ki yitron ha'or min ha'choshech k'nizkar la'il. Like we constantly talk about that one verse in Ecclesiastes, right? Greater is the light and from darkness.
Yeah, a little bit of light banishes a lot of darkness.
Yep. Ach machar shahara shebachlal hasmali babenani hu betokfo kedol toladeto. Even though in a Bainani, in an intermediate person, the evil inclination still has its native strength, I guess they translated it, right? Tokfo toldato, right? The tokef, the strength of what when it was first created. Lit avot ta'ava lechol ta'anugei olam hazeh, right? To have lusts after all the indulgences of this world. ולא נתבטל במיעוט לגבי הטוב, ולא נדחה ממקומו כלל. Even though it has not been nullified before the good, they translated it. Like with a tzaddik, like this is a person who sanctified himself so that his yetzer hatov has actually been, in a sense, removed. But an intermediate person, it's still there. It has not moved from its place. רק שאין לו שליטה וממשלה להתפשט באיברי הגוף.
It's in the opposition.
Yeah, it's in the opposition, but it's not. It's like a California Republican, right? Never gonna win anything, but they still exist. מפני הקדוש ברוך הוא העומד לימין אביון ועוזר ומאיר לנפש האלוקית. Right? Because of the Holy One, blessed be He, who stands to the right of the poor man and helps him through the light in his divine soul. Lachen nikra kerasha. Therefore, he's called like a rasha, like an evil person. Kema'amar Rabbeinu Zechranu L'Racha, like the sages explain, afilu kol ha'olam kulo omrim lacha tzaddik ata heye beinecha kerasha.
Yeah.
So this is his explanation. You should always see yourself as a rasha because you see that you have a capacity to. You have not vanquished the yetzer hara from within you.
Yeah. So I think here it's tough a little bit because it kind of like I can see how this is kind of like. I mean, there's a sense where it's good to focus on your weaknesses, on your gaps, so that you can continue and improve yourself. Mm-hmm. But it's also kind of like there is a sense where this can be read as like negativity or like just, dwelling on the bad parts.
Right, and honestly, like before I started learning about CBT and therapeutic techniques and things like that. It always bothered me. It's like, why are you saying people can't? But ultimately, you see that this is a framework and orientation that all the wisdom traditions reinforce, and it's something that ultimately. Science has proved is far more healthy for the individual, which is to always view yourself in an intermediate state, right? Mm-hmm. Neither the rasha nor the. So we have a tendency to split, right? There's a good person, there's an evil person, right? And the better way to go through life is to see that most things fall somewhere in the middle and to see yourself as somebody who, okay, like I have my faults, but I have a yetzer tov, which also like actually controls me most of the time, at least when I'm sleeping, right? And like, so for a good amount of the time, I'm actually a good person. I'm an okay person, at least, mm-hmm. Right? And that capacity to see things in the intermediate position is actually the healthiest place to be, even though in the final judgment, there really is a judgment. Oh, you know what? This person's a horrible person. This person's a very good person. And part of Hasidic philosophy is recognizing that these two things, there are various ways of viewing things, right? You can view things according to, okay, I am judging this person as if like on the totality of their life right now, or I am judging things about like the potential of that person and his improvement, right? So we see, for example, people saying, hey, you know, should we grade kids on how well they know the subject, or should we grade them on how much they've improved, right? And the fact is, you have to take both of those into consideration. And ultimately, it really does matter if the kid actually knows the subject or not. All right, you're not going to make him into an architect unless he actually knows enough math and physics to not make the building fall down on top of people, right? Despite how much improvement he may have shown.
Yeah.
At the same time, when you're a teacher and you're trying to encourage the child to learn more, right? You have to look at it in a different aspect. And the same thing goes with yourself. You have to realize, oh, am I some sort of great tzaddik, right? And ultimately, this goes back to Korach and Moses, right? Korach comes and says to Moses, hey, why are you making yourself such a great person, right? We're Kol ha'am kedoshim. All the people are holy, right? And the first thing that Moses does is he falls to the ground, right?
Yeah.
He actually seriously asks himself, okay, hello, am I actually doing something wrong? Are there people who are holier than I am who should be leaders? And then he says, Rav lachem b'nei Levi. Says, no, it's not true. I am the leader. I am the best person to be leading. And this is the humblest person in the world, right? And so you have to have the capacity to both fall on your face like Moses does and get back up and say, Rav lachem b'nei Levi. And it's very difficult to do both of those things simultaneously. And a lot of people think if you do one, you're not doing the other. And that's why it's so important that the Torah says, and a lot of people think it's some sort of like mistake or weirdness or something that's, at first I understand it seeming comical to people, right? When it says, Moses is writing down, and God said Moses is the most humble man in the world, right?
Yeah.
At first, you're like, sounds really humble, Moses. But then you have to realize his humility was actually in recognizing, okay, I am that which I am, and I have the capacities that God gave me, and God put me in the position he did. And that's what we say about, like, he looked this way and that, right? It says he looked this way and that before he killed the Egyptian, right? And the sages explain that he saw this way and that there was no one else to do the job. And b'makom she'ein ish tishtadel lihyot ish. In a place where there are no men, you have to try to be a man. And that doesn't mean you're necessarily like, you feel like you're up to it. And in fact, you should doubt yourself. Like, you should be like, am I actually a man? Right? But that can't stop you from trying to be a man and recognizing yourself. And this is the process that the Alter Rebbe is trying to show us, right? There's the idea of even if the entire world tells you that you're a tzaddik, think of yourself as a rasha, and you should never view yourself as a rasha, right? You should never view yourself as an evil person.
Yeah, it's interesting. It kind of, in ways, echoes the Rambam too in Mishneh Torah. Even though the Rambam kind of talks about it, he emphasizes, from what I can understand, the attributes, like the middle route of the attributes. Kind of like what you said with Moses being able to do that, or like how even every virtue, or it's a spectrum of being generous or being frugal, or not frugal, but just like being cheap. But there is a middle route there. You can be too generous, where you can't even sustain yourself and your family, and then you can just be greedy. So
and you see some people, like they're OCD, right?
Mm-hmm.
They are so into perfection that they can't actually get anything done. And there are people who, like, they're just careless and negligent. Right? So their ha'emtza'i, the golden mean, right? This is something that is widely understood in wisdom literature, including Jewish wisdom literature, and that's something that's being emphasized here.
Mm-hmm.
Ket rasha, heye beinecha ket rasha. You should see yourself as a rasha, as an evil person. Velo rasha mamash, right? But it doesn't say like you should actually think of yourself as an evil person. It says like an evil person. Eila sheyachzik atzmo lebeinani, right? A person should always consider themselves neither a tzaddik nor a rasha, but someone in the middle who has to, in fact, try to be better than he is, despite the fact that he always has the evil inclination. V'lo lahamin lahaolam she'omrim shehara shebo nitbatel legabe hatov. Right? He should never believe if people say, "Oh, you're such a tzaddik, shazu medragat tzaddik," right? You're such a great person, you cannot sin, right? And it's like the Mishnah says, "Al ta'amin ba'atzmacha." You should not have confidence in yourself until the day you die, right? Ela yihyeh be'enav ke'ilu mahuto ba'atzmuto shel hara hu betokfo v'guvrato b'chalal hasmali ketoladato, right? He should always consider that it's still there, and he has this this capacity for evil, and that's what happened with Rava. He's like kagon ana beinin v'lo halaf v'halach mimenu me'uma, that it hasn't actually been removed. V'adarab nitchazek yoter behemshech hazman, rather that it has actually gotten stronger over the time. Shenishtamesh bo harbe, that it has. It's funny. I'm actually reading Chovot HaLevavot, and he makes this point. He talks about how he talks about how, like, when you exercise, the muscle gets stronger, and you see that your evil inclination is always there. It's always there. So it has more exercise than your good inclination.
Right. I mean, when you exercise, you give power to both, because they both can use the body.
But he means that the Yetzer Hara is like, he's the jacked, guy who's always in the gym, right? Whereas you're even if you're exercising your Yetzer Hatov, right? It's not it tends not to be the gym rat that they get to arise.
Yeah, it's like Venom and Spider-Man. That's it for me.
There you go. I guess. Ba'achila ushtiya ushar inyane olam hazeh. Right? When a person eats and drinks, right, he's giving his animal soul strength. Va'af mi shebatorat Hashem chatzo, even somebody who truly desires the ways of God, the Torah of God, ve'yehgeh ba yomam v'layla l'shma, and he meditates upon it day and night for its own sake. Ein zu hochachat klal shenitcha hara mimkomo. That person should not in any way think, oh, there we go, I don't have to worry about ever sinning. Ela yechol lihyot, but it's possible. Shemahuto va'atzmuto hu betokfo uguvrato b'mkomo b'chalal hasmali, that it's possible that it's actually still there. Rak shelevushav shehem machshava dibur u'maaseh, but it is never enclosed in the thought, speech, and action of a person, but it's still hiding back behind that. Shel nefesh habahamit einan mitlapshim b'moch v'hapeh v'hayadayim ushar evrei haguf. It never actually has control over his body in any way. Mipnei Hashem shenatan shlita u'mamshala lamoach al halev. Because God has gifted him this capacity to rule over the evil inclination.
Yeah, it's pretty cool how this kind of like reminds me of the way that I don't know if it's a viruses, but I mean a lot of different viruses, I guess. Right, like we spoke about tuberculosis or HIV, I guess, like AIDS. You can have something in your body that is a remnant of it, but your body controls it to an extent. It controls it so that it doesn't actually.
So you know what shingles are?
I had it, yeah.
Yeah, so
I had it as a kid, yeah, for some for odd reason, but yeah.
You had shingles as a kid, not chickenpox as a kid. That's interesting. So what happens for older adults is they tend to get shingles anytime they're stressed or their immune system is weak, because they have the chickenpox virus in their body, but usually their body can control it. But when they're stressed and their immune system becomes weak, they burst out into shingles.
Yep. Yeah, so you need to be aware that it's helpful for you to know that you have that thing inside your body so that you are avoiding the triggers that can break it out of its cell.
Right. And avoiding the triggers and, being on your guard. I mean, generally being on your guard is a good thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. V'lachen nefesh halokit shebamoach moshelet ba'ir ketana. Therefore, the divine soul is what rules over the ir katana, the small city. Evrei haguf kulam, that is your actual body. Sheyihu levush umerkava, so that it becomes a garment or a chariot, or they translate it as vehicle, right? L'shlosha levusheha sheyitlapshu bahem, to the three garments, thought, speech, and action. Shehem machshava dibur umaseh shel taryag mitzvot haTorah, of the 613 mitzvot of the Torah. Aval mahuta va'atzmuta, but its actual essence and being, shel nefesh ha'elokit, ein la shlita u'memshala al mahuta va'atzmuta shel nefesh ha'bahamit b'beinoni. But in an intermediate person, these things, the war has not been won. The battles are won, but the war has not been won. Ki'im b'sha'a sha'avat Hashem hu behetgalut libo except at those times when his love for God manifests itself in his heart. בעיתים מזומנים כמו בשעת התפילה וכיוצא בה. So there are certain times when a person is overcome with a burning passion for God, like when he is truly praying and saying the tefillah, or anything that is like that. Va'af gam zot hapam, but even something like that, eina rak shlita u'manshala levad. That's not. That's only he's saying preponderance and dominion, right? It's only control. Kidichtiv u'la'um mil'um ya'amatz, as it is written of the battle between Jacob and Esau, allegorically representing the war between good and evil in man's soul, and one nation shall prevail over the other, right? Ye'amatz, it shall be stronger. Keshazeh kam zeh nofel, that one of them is rises and the other one falls, or keshazeh kam chulu, right? So you have that constant battle. It's not, the war is not finally won. Shenefesh halokit mitametzet umitgaberet al nefesh habehamit b'makor hagvurot shehi bina. So thus the divine soul gains strength and ascendancy over the animal soul in the source of strength, which is understanding. So Bina is on the left side of the Partsufim.
Yeah.
Right? That's the side of that is the side of Gevurah. And Bina, so just to review, Chokhmah is the here, let's pull this.
Yeah, I always thought Bina was more feminine and Gvura is more
It is
masculine.
No, Gevurah is also feminine.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, so that's so. This is a Partsuf, and there, if you count, you will see that there's actually 11 sfirot here, but there are only 10 sfirot. And like it says, I believe in Sefer Yetzirah, they are 10, not 9. They are 10, not 11. Why? Because Keter, Dat, Umalchut, they are in essence in a super state, and any Partsuf at any one time only has 2 out of those 3 that are revealed.
Mm-hmm.
And so the left side, and this is meant to actually allow you to like look at it. So I think it's showing the same way in front of everyone, but for me at least, Chokhmah is on the right side because I can look at it and see it's on my right, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Chokhmah, that's the masculine side. Bina is the feminine side,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
And so Chokhmah is the spark, koachma, right? It is the potentiality of something very small, right? Like the male gamete is a very small thing, right? Bina is boneh, it builds, right? So it's Havana is the capacity to understand things from the other, and so differentiate, but also to expound and gestate and give shape to, right? Mm-hmm. So another way of looking at it is through the Tetragrammaton, and Chokhmah is like the Yud, Bina is like the Dalet of the first Hey, and Da'at is like the Yud underneath the Dalet of the first Hey. Okay? So Bina is bone, it is gestating, and dot is when it all comes together, right? Again, and you have the shlemut of Shem Kal, right?
Yep.
And so
This is tiring.
What?
This is tiring to explain.
No, why?
No, that's not. I mean,
it seemed like I was getting tired. No, I'm just wondering if I'm going over things that you already know or people already know. Like I've been trying not to play Jacob's greatest hits as much as I used to.
Yeah, no, I'm actually curious. For some reason, I thought gvula, strength or courage, I don't know how it's translated, would be more masculine. I don't know.
So this is one of the things, especially one of the difficulties I have with Jungians and with Pajot, is so severity and strength is often considered masculine in Western symbolism, whereas in Kabbalistic symbolism, we see it as actually feminine.
Okay.
And it's always a contrast, right? So we say Melech Poretz Geder, right? A king is breaks boundaries, and it is the male capacity, and that's what Chesed is, the male capacity to impregnate, to break through, to whereas it's the feminine capacity to create boundaries and give shape, and so really binding things is very feminine. That's why when you put on your right shoe, then you put on your left shoe. You tie your left shoe, then you tie your right shoe, because all tying is done on the left, but we give more. We start almost everything with the right, except for tying. That which is bound is from the left.
Okay, there's more to explore there, but we can.
There's a lot to explore.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're on a Kabbalah series.
Well, we are. What do you think this is?
Yeah.
Okay. Lehitbonen begedulat Hashem ein sof baruch hu uleholid ahava azah laHashem kirishpe esh bechalal hayamini shebelibbo. Right. So when a person uses his bina, right? So chokhmah is inspiration. But bina is the capacity to actually contemplate something and to understand davar mitoch davar, to understand one thing out of another. So when you're pondering, you're using your bina, right, to awaken a flaming love of God, right? And therefore, you're actually causing this very important word, kafia, right? You're actually conquering the sitra achra, and working it and changing it, right, in the left side. But it still is not completely vanquished in a Beinoni, but rather in a righteous person. Shene'amar bo v'libi halal b'kirbi. Because it is the tzaddik who can say, right? So when we say libi, you will see that it is one lev. It's not levav, right? So levav has an ambivalence to it, whereas lev is a completeness, a wholeness, a singularity. And it says libi halal bekirbi, that it is void within me. V'hu mo'es bara v'sod'o b'tachlit hasin'a v'hamius, and he's disgusted with evil, and he hates it with the greatest of hatred and disgust. Oh, shelo betachlit hasina kanizkar la'ayel. Or he may not be a tzaddik gamor, so it's not a complete hatred, but still he truly hates and is disgusted by evil. Aval be'beinani. But when we talk about an intermediate person, who derech mashal kadam sheyashen, is like a sleeping person, sheyachol lachzor v'leor mishnato, that the person has a capacity to get up, awaken, and actually reactivate his faculties. Kach hara b'beinani. The evil is sleeping, right? It's inactive. Hu keyashen b'chalal hasmali b'sha'at kriyat shema u'tefillah shel libo bo'er ba'avat Hashem, right? Especially when somebody is praying and saying Shema, right? That at that moment, if he's truly praying and saying Shema, he is aroused towards the love of God. Right? Yet still afterwards, it's possible that the person becomes capable of doing evil. V'lachen haya Rabba machzik atzmo kebeinani. Therefore, Rabba could say he is like a beinani, right? He knew that he is somebody who keeps the mitzvot at all times. So why could he possibly think that he's a beinani? Because he saw in himself that it could be that he may want to sin, even though it was not, in fact, in any way evident within him.
Dormant.
Yeah.
No, I'm just saying it was dormant.
Yeah, dormant. Yeah. With Torah Hashem chatzo yomam b'layla, b'chafitza b'chashika u'tshuka. Right? He was completely somebody who loved God completely. V'nefesh shokeka l'Hashem ba'ava rabba b'sha'at kriyat shema v'tefillah. Right? That his soul yearning for God with overwhelming love. Right? Like when someone is praying. V'nidme be'inav. But it seemed to him, he thought, maybe in the fact that I am learning Torah all the time, right? Maybe I'm just somebody who has the good fortune to be like constantly in prayer and in things which arouse a love of God. But maybe it's not inherent within me that it is always that way. Right? Like the sages say, if only a person could pray all day long. And therefore, this capacity of love, ha'amura b'beinanim, b'sha'at ha'tevilah, which for an intermediate person is at the time that he prays. Al yedei hitgabrut hanefesh halokit, since his godly soul is overwhelming his animal soul. Hine legabe madragat atzadikim odei Hashem be'emet la'amito. But when you talk about an actual tzaddik, when you talk about somebody who is truly a tzaddik, right? That person, this is nothing to them, because such a person, it doesn't even have any capacity to sin whatsoever. Since it is something that is not eternal and constant. It's something that is only for a certain amount of time. Whereas it is written, the language, literally the lip of truth, shall be established forever, but the tongue of falsehood is only momentary. So that which is true, right? That which is emet is something that is constant and forever, right? But we see that by the vast majority of people, right? Ra Kadosh Baruch Hu shetzadikim mu'atim hem, right? There are very few people who are at the level of an actual tzaddik. Most people can only hope to be a Beinoni. Va'af al pi chen, legabei madrigat habeinonim nikret avodat hama. For somebody who is an intermediate person, such thing is called considered a full or complete service of God. Be'emet la'amito shelahem, in terms of their level of truth, the level of the Beinoni. Ish kefi madrikato b'madrigat haBeinoni, right? So each person has their station. I was saying to Father Stephen, it's not so. Imagine that holiness is a mountain.
Yep.
Right, and it's not what elevation are you at, because God put you somewhere on that mountain. You started somewhere on that mountain. The question is, are you moving up the mountain or down the mountain? Right? Which way are you headed? Are you facing towards the summit, or are you facing towards the bottom? And some people are born way high up on the mountain, much farther than you will ever be able to get, because that's not where you were born, right? And that's really the essence of what it says. So there's a story in the Talmud of somebody who dies and is resurrected, and he comes back and they ask him, what did he see? And he says, Olam hafuf ra'iti. I saw an upside down world, right? The great ones were small and the small ones were great. And so one explanation of that is you will see that some people who were born there was no chance that they were going to fall into any of the sins that the vast majority of people fall into, and never, chas v'shalom, that they would end up becoming some sort of murderer or something like that. It wasn't even a potential thing that could happen. Right? It just wasn't something in their life. Whereas some people were born in a situation where it would have been very, very normal for them to have actually killed someone. Personally, it makes me think of Nissim Black, right? So Nissim, it was born in a situation where his parents were drug dealing while he was a teenager. He was drug dealing while he was a teenager. Like, this is before he was even bar mitzvah. He was dealing drugs, right? Like, he's not responsible for that. And the man is now living in, and he became a gangster rapper, and where he was expected to kill or be killed, and and now he's living in Jerusalem, studying all day, and he's shomer Torah u'mitzvot in ways I wish I could be, and he's mekadesh shem shamayim, right? So and this is what it means that b'makom should balei tshuva omdim ein tzadikim gemorim omdim, right? So, who am I to compare between the mountains? But, for example, the Steipler Gaon, Rabbi Chaim Kanievsky, who passed away recently, about a year ago, I believe, he was born into a great family of great rabbis. his uncle was the Chazon Ish on his mother's side, and his father was the stipler before him, Rav Kanievsky, right? And so he grew up a Kedusha Tahara his whole life, and even though he became Gadol Hador, he became one of the most respected Torah scholars of the generation. He's one of the few people at a very young age the Rebbe bought his commentary on Maimonides and quoted it, right? Like, there weren't many people who were contemporaries of the Rebbe who, at a young age, the Rebbe is like, oh, I need to read what this guy has to say about Maimonides, and then to quote it, right?
Yeah.
But, okay, so, like, how do you compare? Like, and frankly, we can't compare. Is Nissim Black a greater person, or is the Stipler Gaon a greater person? Like, this is, and in a sense, there is no comparison that can be made, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because the Stipler was born in a very different situation than Nissim was, and so, like, it's a whole other thing. And yes, Elijah, you don't feel anything when you pray because you're not doing it right. if you don't feel anything when you pray, you're not really praying. I hate to tell you this.
But I mean, it takes. I'll speak to him. I mean, it's also new to me, but I think it takes time. Or I mean, it's not. Or
It takes practice. It
Yeah.
takes practice. You have to, and one of the things you have to do when you pray is you have to actually arouse love and fear and awe of God. You actually have to, like, work at it. It's not. It can't be routine.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Where were we?
איש כפי מדרגתו למדרגת הבינונים, I guess. I don't remember, but
Yeah.
for the screen.
Yeah, we were saying each person according to that person's level, right? So each person has where they're born on the mountain and which way they travel, right? והריני קורא באהבתם שבתפילתם גם כן שפת אמת תיכון לעד. Their love too, which they possess only during prayer, I term the language of truth, which shall be established forever. It is a true and lasting love. Hoyo uvakoach nafsham ha'elokit lachzor la'orer bechinat ahava zu la'olam, because their godly soul has a capacity to awaken this always. Behitgavruta b'sha'at atefila midei yom beyomo, because it is something that is. So this is one thing that you will see he will repeatedly talk about. So there's that which is constant, right? That is active and can be seen at all times.
Mm-hmm.
Then there is something that is also considered, in a sense, constant, in that it is always there in potential, and it is something that reveals itself over and over again. And then I believe he will start talking about, and even for somebody who, like, even once, right? You see that also has a level, especially when we talk about a mitzvah, right? That when somebody does a mitzvah, you put on tefillin today, right? That is a davar nitzchi, because you are doing God's will, and in that you are representing God in the world. That's a davar nitzchi in and itself, and that minute will never go away. That mitzvah that you did can never be undone, because it is a davar nitzchi itself.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. על ידי הכנה הראויה לכל נפש בפי ערכה ומדרגתה, right? If you prepare correctly according to each person's level. כי הנה מידת אמת היא מידתו של יעקב. So when we talk about truth, right? Since there is that verse, and Christians, when I say Jacob is the man of truth, they like lose their mind. But it says in Micah 7:20, Titen emet leYaakov, hanikra briach hatikon hamabriach min hakatze el hakatze, right? Because we say we say Chesed LaAbraham, Gevurah is Yitzchak, and Yaakov is Tiferet, and Tiferet is in the middle pillar of the Partsufim. Merum hamaalot umadregot ad sof kol dargin. In spiritual terms, this means that the attribute of truth passes from the highest gradations and levels to the end, lowest of all grades. So Mavriach, he is from one to the other. Yeah.
So I meant like they're kind of like what we said. It goes through all the levels.
Well, yes, it does. I mean, so I pulled this up a lot and I've explained it, right? You'll see that Sheker, all three of the letters are at the end of the Hebrew alphabet, and all of them would fall over. Emet, the first letter is the first letter of the alphabet, Mem is the middle letter, Taf is the last letter, and all of them are solid, they wouldn't fall down. But there's also in Legabe HaPartsufim, you see that Tiferet is in the middle, right? It is something that it has a connection to all of the Sefirot.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay. Merum Amalota Uchol Ma'ala Madriga Mavriach Toch Nekuda Ha'emtza'it. In each gradation and level, it passes through the central point of that particular level. Shehi Nekudat Ubechinat Midat Emet Shala. Right? So it is true according to where it is. Right?
Yeah. And does this relate to what we discussed with the kind of like the middle route?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it does. It does. Because again, you're looking at which way am I pointed toward? Am I walking up the mountain or down the mountain? I'm not looking at, okay, I'm at 2,000 feet, I'm at 3,000 feet, I'm at 1,000 feet, I'm at the bottom. Like, you know, like you're looking according to that place. Which way are you oriented? Are you headed uphill or downhill? Right? Umidat emet hi nachala bli metzarim. The attribute of truth is an unbounded inheritance. Ve'en la shi'ur lamala ad rum hama'alot. And it has no upper limit. V'chol ma'alot u'madragat shelamata hem ka'ayin legabe ma'alot u'madragot shelamala mehen. Right? And this is a general rule of the disparity of the holy over that which is not holy, is that it is so much more. There is no comparison. There is no equality, even though we say Zeh le'umat zeh asa Elokim, right? That God creates things with their opposites. Ultimately, we see that evil is kala chashiv. It's as if it does not exist.
Can you give me like, is there a simple example of how you can show that truth is something that's qualitatively different than the mala, the
Well,
degradation.
this is a value judgment. I have to say, it is a value judgment, right? This is something that we're saying. We believe that when God says, when He created the world, He said that it's good, right? And so we believe that ultimately, and this is an article of faith, ultimately, that God will, that which is good will prevail. And the Bible says this. So what I usually point to is the Ten Commandments, because especially Christians are very loath to try to. Everybody's on my headphones. I actually prefer earpods, but I bought so many of them, and all of them get destroyed. So I'm hoping this one I'll have long term. Anyway,
Better go natural.
yeah, but then you have to worry about the echoes, and yeah. Okay.
I like echo. It's like validation.
No, you have your. I mean, I'm going to hopefully set this place up so that I'll have a futon behind me, and so when Trey or other people are there, I can have the peanut gallery,
Right, yeah.
and I can have the sound on, and the microphone won't get caught by the sound because it'll be over. At least that's what my nephew tells me, and my nephew must know everything. No, earbuds are so much more comfortable. Garth, you're smoking crack. Okay. What were we talking about? We were talking
Headphones
about
is truth, and earbuds are like degradation below it.
Yeah. So in the Ten Commandments, God says that I will give the blessings onto thousands of generations of those who love me, and I will visit the sins onto the third and even fourth generation, right? So you see that sin is something that is by its nature limited, and something that is visited, and because it's not something that comes from God, right? And by virtue of the fact that it is not something that comes from God, it can't. And really, this is an article of faith, because when we look at the world, we're looking at Alma de Shikra. We see that in the world, right? And the Mishnah talks about. I mean, this is ultimately the question of theodicy, right? We see that good people oftentimes suffer, and we see that oftentimes evil people, Shalvat Rashayim, right? The evil people are in fact doing well, but the arc of justice bends towards justice. The arc of history bends towards justice. That's also something that, in the long term, you see, right? In the long term, it becomes clear, and that is actually the strange lesson of history, is that doing something temporarily for temporary gain, we see over and over, it just does not work that well. It doesn't end up prevailing, even though it may, lefi sha'ah, it might for I mean, honestly, I was just listening to the original sermon that Martin Luther King got arc of justice bends, the arc of history bends towards justice for, and he discusses this in a very intelligent way, and he's like, but you see that there are all these proverbs, right? Of all kinds of, not just from the Bible, but also from other places, right? And Jordan Peterson keeps on saying, you never get away with anything, right? I'm not sure I would say you never get away with anything, but we see over the arc of history, we see what is true and good prevails. Mm-hmm. And that's actually one of the ways in which we know that it is true and good, is that it is true and good in the long term. That's why we say, like, L'dor v'dor and L'netzach netzachim, right? That is one of the ways in which we make judgments, is if it's something that is long-term and lasting.
Right, when we see its effects or its fruits.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, we better keep on going because I do have to leave. Okay. בכל מעלות ומדרגות שלמטה הם כעין לגבי מעלות ומדרגות של מעלה מהן. כידוע ליודעי חן שבחינת ראש ומוחן של מדרגת התחתונות הן למטה מבחינת עקביים ורגלי מדרגות עליונות מהן. As is known to the students of the Kabbalah, the quality that is the head and intellect, the highest level within lower grades, is inferior to the soles and feet, the very lowest level, which is within the higher grades. And I guess if you're not a Kabbalist, you might not know this, but it's true. Right? They say that even the feet of the holy chayot is surpasses all, is greater than even the greatest of the things. So it's level, and yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I since we're over, I can just mention this since the chapter. I just heard a commentary on this, talking about the levels and the levels of different life. Like you have chai, tzomeach, domem, inanimate objects. So you have things that are at a higher level, but in a way they are sustained by the lower levels, right? You would think that the higher level sustains everything else, but the lower levels actually sustain the higher levels. So the animal is sustained by the vegetation is sustained by water, or that it's right, and then the animals are sustained by vegetation. And people are sustained by, or man is sustained by everything, all of those things.
You're right. Yeah, I mean there is from below up, right? I think they call it emergence and emanation, right? Mm-hmm. Emanation is from above down, and the other way is thing. Yeah. So both exist. Yes.
Yeah.
It's all you. Chapter 14.
Okay. Let me put it here. Chapter 14. והנה מידת הבינוני היא מידת כל אדם ואחריה כל אדם ימשוך. Now the rank of Benoni is one that is attainable by every man. Each person should strive after it. שכל אדם יכול להיות בינוני בכל עת ובכל שעה. For every person can at any time or hour be a Benoni. Right? כי הבינוני אינו מואס ברע. Because a Benoni does not abhor evil. שזהו דבר המסור ללב. For this is a matter entrusted to the heart. ולא כל העיתים שוות. also not all times are alike. So, I mean, when he says like you can be a Benoni at every hour, right? When he talks about praying, or like the love that you have during prayer, that is when those fleeting moments where you can be like a tzaddik, right?
Right. Yeah.
אלא סור מרע ועשה טוב, דיינו, בפועל ממש ובמעשה דיבור ומחשבה. Rather, the task of the Benoni is only to turn away from evil and do good in actual practice, in deed, speech, and thought. שבהם הבחירה והיכולת והרשות נתונה לכל אדם. In these matters, as opposed to the matters of the heart, every man is given the choice, ability, and freedom לעשות ולדבר ולחשוב גם משהו נגד תאוות ליבו והפכה ממש. To act, speak, and think even that which is contrary to the desire of his heart and diametrically opposed to it. כי גם בשעה שהלב חומד ומתאווה איזו תאווה גשמית, בהיתר או באיסור חס ושלום, for even when one's heart craves and desires a material pleasure, whether permitted, in which case it is only the lustful nature of the desire that is evil, or whether, God forbid, he desires that which is forbidden, and the desire is intrinsically evil, whatever sort of craving it is. Interesting. יכול להתגבר ולהסיח דעתו ממנה לגמרי באמרו לליבו. He can conquer this desire and divert his attention from it altogether by declaring to himself as follows: אינני רוצה להיות רשע אפילו שעה אחת. I do not want to be a rasha even for a moment. כי אינני רוצה להיות מובדל ונפרד חס ושלום מהשם אחד בשום אופן, כי דכתיב עונותיכם מבדילים וגו. Because under no circumstances do I want to be parted and severed, heaven forbid, from the one God, as is written, your inequities separate you from God.
Avonotechem.
Avonotechem. Right.
Yeah.
Avonotechem. Okay. So basically you need to remind yourself of the effects, right? Of the punishment of what is, like, if I do this, then this is like I'm gonna be
right. So this is the lower form of fear of God, which is fear of punishment.
Right. Yeah. רק אני רוצה לדבקה בו נפשי, רוחי ובנשמתי, בהתלבשן בשלושה לבושיו יתברך. I desire instead, so continuing the speech, instead to unite my nefesh, ruach, and neshama with God through investing them in his three garments. שהם מעשה דיבור ומחשבה בהשם ותורתו ומצוותיו. Namely, action, speech, and thought dedicated to God, his Torah, and his commandments. מהאהבה מסותרת שבליבי להשם, כמו בלב כללות ישראל שנקראו אוהבי שמך. So this desire to unite with God arises out of the love of God that is hidden in my heart, just as this love is found in the heart of all Jews who are called lovers of your name. ואפילו קל שבקלים יכול למסור נפשו על קדושת השם, ולא נופל אנוכי ממנו בוודאי. For this reason, even a kal shebakalim, a most unworthy Jew, is capable of sacrificing his life for the sanctity of God. Surely I am not inferior to him. Kal shebakalim, why is it called kal shebakalim? Kal is like light.
Yeah.
Easy.
So, yeah. So, I mean, even you see that the word kavod gets translated to English as glory, right? It's actually kaved means heavy, right? So there are two things. So heaviness versus lightness, and metzarim versus rachava, right? So narrow versus wideness, right?
Mhm.
This is analogous language, although this gets people into trouble because then there's the Talmudic edict, Nashim Datan Kalot. Women have light minds. So how most people try to explain that is it's women can be more fickle. That's what it means. But yeah. Ben says, unworthy Jew as I join the stream. Way to be settled, Ben.
So if you're trying, so you can be like in Kabbalistic circles, you can tell somebody you're such a lightweight, and they would understand what you're saying.
Kal Shabakalim. I mean, this is something that the Talmud talks about. So it calls Yeftach, Japhet. It calls him Kal Shabakalim. In that's it's rabbinic Hebrew, Kal Shabakalim. Yeah.
Ella
and Donnie is precisely that, Kal Shabakalim.
Danny's definitely not. He's definitely a heavyweight.
Heavyweight. Then he should start teaching some Talmud. I know he can. Yeah. Okay.
אלא שנכנס בו רוח שטות, ונדמה לו שבעבירה זו עודנו ביהדותו, ואין נשמתו מובדלת מאלוהי ישראל. It is only that a spirit of folly has entered him. As our sages say, no man sins unless overcome by a spirit of folly. He imagines that committing this sin will not affect his Jewishness and that his soul will not be severed thereby from the God of Israel. וגם, שוכח אהבתו להשם המסותרת בליבו. He also forgets the love of God hidden in his heart. אבל אני אינני רוצה להיות שוטה כמוהו לכפור האמת. לכפור. All this applies to the Kal Shabakalim. So this is the Kal Shabakalim. Well, no. But as for me, the Beinoni, one should say to himself, I have no desire to be such a fool as he to deny the truth. מה שאין כן, בדבר המסור ללב, דיינו, שיהיה הרע מאוס ממש בלב וסנוי.
Sanui, yeah.
It is different, however, with something entrusted to the heart, meaning, in our case, that one's heart actually abhor and despise the evil. What does it mean, masur lalev?
So this is something that belongs to the heart, and a person cannot rationally will themselves to hate something. It is possible to arouse certain emotions eventually to conquer your emotions, and that is the eventual goal. But whether you are successful in that's not up to you. What is up to you is to fight the fight. You fight the fight. God has to win it.
Right. לא עליך מלאכה
לגמור, אלא, yeah. You're not free להיבטל ממנה.
בתכלית השנאה, בתכלית שנאה, או אפילו שלא בתכלית שנאה. So you fight this whether with absolute hatred, as the perfect tzaddik, or even quite not so utterly.
Right. So it's not up to you certainly it's not up to you to be a tzaddik gamor, and even to be a tzaddik she'eno gamor, even that is not something that's really up to you. That's something that God has to gift you. Your job is to try to be a Beinoni, to at least be a person who doesn't allow this evil inclination to actually rule over them.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very interesting. I was watching a soccer game yesterday, and there's a player that usually plays in one position, but then he was put in a different position. And really, if he's able to also play that position, you know that he's going to be like a world-class player. But he's not, like, he's still struggling with it. So
Right.
it's hard for him, and people can judge him for it. But you also know that if he's not going to try to be that world-class player that can play in those two positions,
Yeah.
then he won't fulfill the potential that he might have. But you don't know if you have that unless you try, right? So you kind of have to struggle. Even though you're doing really good in one position, you kind of have to struggle to challenge yourself.
Yeah. You have to realize there's a war, and you want to be in what do they call it? The zone of proximal development, right? You have to be in the zone of proximal development. This is something I keep on talking to certain people who are probably not listening, but maybe, who often find themselves trying to be like perfectly holy and then failing, and then they whatchamacallit,
Give up.
and they keep on. They're like, no, I have to be able to do this, and it's like, okay, you know what? Let's try a little bit smaller. Let's try a little bit, And I wasn't talking about you, Donnie. Although also you, Donnie. I hope you're wearing those tzitzit.
Right.
Even though I'm not wearing tzitzit, but you should definitely be wearing tzitzit. You were born on a much higher level of the mountain than I was. Me, I'm like Nisim, except I haven't gotten up the mountain. You were born in Baltimore, Ir HaKadosha. So you have zero excuses, Donnie. Yeah, let's keep on going.
Okay. So, הנה זה, אי אפשר שיהיה באמת לאמיתו, אלא על ידי גודל ותוקף אהבה להשם, בבחינת אהבה בתענוגים, להתענג על השם, מעין עולם הבא. This cannot be attained in complete truth, except through that level of intense love of God called love which experiences delights, which consists of delighting in godliness, akin to the bliss of the world to come. ועל זה אמרו רבותינו זיכרונם לברכה, עולמך תראה בחייך. ואין כל אדם זוכה לזה, כי זהו כאין קיבול שכר. Concerning one who experiences this, the love of the lights, our sages said, you shall see a glimmer of your reward in the world to come in your lifetime. Not every man is privileged to attain this state, for it is in the nature of a reward received from above. וכדכתיב, עבודת מתנה אתן את כהונתם וכה. Though it is written, I, God, shall grant you your priestly service as a gift, כמו שנתבאר במקום אחר, as is explained elsewhere. So this is something that you receive.
Yeah.
ולכן אמר איוב, בראת צדיקים. Therefore, Job said, you have created tzadikim, righteous people, וכדאית בתיקונים, שיש בנשמות ישראל כמה מדרגות ובחינות. As stated in תיקוני הזוהר, there are many grades and degrees in Jewish souls. חסידים, גיבורים המתגברים על יצרם, מערי תורה, נביאים, צדיקים, עיין שם. Pious men, strong men who gain mastery over their evil inclinations, scholars of Torah, prophets, tzaddikim, and so forth. ובזה יובן כפל לשון השבועה, תהיה צדיק ואל תהיה רשע. Now we may understand the repetitious wording in the oath administered to every Jew before birth. Be a tzaddik and be not a rasha. What does he mean, administer to every Jew before birth?
So, like it says, mashpin oto, right? So they cause him to take an oath. So before your soul is allowed to come down into the world, mashpin oto, you are there's an oath administered to you. They force you to take an oath.
Right. Okay. לכאורה תמוהה, כי מאחר שמשביעים אותו תהיה צדיק, למה צריכים להשביע עוד שלא יהיה רשע? At first glance, it seems puzzling. Once he's charged to be a tzaddik, why the need to adjure him again not to be a rasha? אלא משום שאין כל אדם זוכה להיות צדיק, ואין לאדם משפט הבחירה בזה כל כך, להתענג על השם באמת, ושיהיה הרע מאוס ממש באמת. The answer is that insomuch as not everyone is privileged to become a tzaddik, nor as a person has the full advantage of choice in this matter, of experiencing true delight in God, and of actually truly abhorring evil. This might answer the clown's also message about why he doesn't feel anything when he prays. Or for myself as well. ולכן משביעים שנית אל תהיה רשע על כל פנים. Each person is consequently adjured a second time. You shall at any rate not be a rasha. שבזה משפט הבחירה והרשות נתונה לכל אדם. With regard to this not being evil, rasha, the right of choice and freedom is extended to every man. למשול ברוח תאוותו שבליבו ולכבוש יצרו שלא יהיה רשע אפילו שעה אחת כל ימיו. To control the spirit of lust in his heart and to conquer his nature so that he shall not be wicked for even one moment throughout his life. בין בבחינת סור מרע, בין בבחינת ועשה טוב, ואין טוב אלא תורה. So this applies both in the realm of turning away from evil, refraining from transgression, and in that of doing good, performing all the positive mitzvot in which he is obliged, and especially the mitzvah of Torah study, which is specifically termed good. As our sages say, there is no good other than Torah. דיינו דלמוד תורה שכנגד כולם, meaning the study of Torah which balances or is equal all the other mitzvot combined. So when he says do not be evil, it means both do some mitzvahs and also don't transgress.
Yeah. Well, okay. So yeah. So don't be a rasha. What he's really explaining is Tehi tzaddik v'al tehi rasha. And Dan asks a good question. Is it a false oath if the soul that descends does not follow through the promise to be righteous? If so, how can a soul make a false oath? And the fact is, it's not a false oath if you do everything that you can to do what you are supposed to. And what he's explaining is Tehi tzaddik, that's something that is possible you will be gifted from above. But al tehi rasha, don't be a rasha, don't be an evil person. At least that you can achieve. And that includes not even being mevatel a mitzvat aseh, right? So you have a mitzvat aseh to what's a mitzvah aseh for everyone? So even Noachites, they have a mitzvah aseh to help establish justice in the world, right? And or to have children or whatever, right? it's not up to you. The results aren't up to you. So tehi tzaddik, that you would become such a person that doesn't even have an evil inclination, that's something that God gives. But al tehi rasha, don't be an evil person, which means that you never actually do any of the things that your evil inclination would want you to do. That is something you have a capacity of doing. You have a capacity of not allowing the evil inclination to rule over you. And even that, I have to say, like Anus Rahmana Patre, it's not true that it's in everyone's capacity to, for example, I don't know, put on tefillin every day, right? Some people, they never owned a pair of tefillin and they can't afford it, right? It's even a cheap pair of tefillin is $300-$400. So if you're a teenager and your parents aren't buying you a tefillin, right? Is that 14-year-old really considered a rasha? No, of course not, right? So Anus Rahmana Patre is also a part of that, right? It depends where you are at the time where you are, which mitzvot you should be worrying yourself about. And Daniel Shalom agrees, and since he's one of the dayanim of my Discord server, we have then it must be true. Go ahead.
אך אף על פי כן, צריך לקבוע לו עיתים גם כן להשית עצות בנפשו להיות מואס ברע. Nevertheless, one must also set aside specific periods to seek for himself means of abhorring evil. כגון, בעצת חכמינו זיכרונם לברכה, אישה חמת מלאה צואה, וכהי גוונה. For example, following
high gavna, yes, like
gavna.
High gavna, yeah.
The advice of our sages, woman is a vessel full of filth and the like. Okay, so, now I probably need to explain this.
He says, so the sages said a person should reflect on the fact that this woman that you're lusting after, ultimately she's a human being, right? She's a sack of flesh, right? And you cut her open, chas v'shalom, right? It's nekudat habechira, Rabbi Lerman says. The point of choice, right? You have your choices where you are, but so he's explaining that there are times when you need to actually awaken your hatred of or disgust of sin in yourself.
Right. So he's saying that the lust for women. So it almost feels like there's a lust for women that makes them something very high, right? And like holy, even in your mind, or it's kind of like an equivalency. But he says you need to remember the nature.
Yeah, you need to remember that it's like, yeah, it's not.
It's interesting. It's interesting that it's implicit here that you need to put them down because they're so high when you're lusting for. I guess maybe everything is.
He's going to say v'chen kol minei matamim u'madanim. Okay. Right. So we're not just talking about chas v'shalom, like just talking about sexual sin, but that is one of the most common ones.
Right. So when you look at a Mars bar, you should remind yourself this has corn syrup.
There you go.
Well, of course.
Yeah, like this is gonna make my teeth rot and make me fat, and right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. וכל מיני מטעמים ומעדנים נעשים כך. Okay, so when there's no dot inside the chaf, it's pronounced. Okay, I need to remember that. When there's a dot, it's kaf. When it's not, it's chaf.
Yeah, Beged Kafet. So originally, all 6 of those letters, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, Kaf, Pei, and Taf. Originally, all six of those were, and with the Yemenites, all 6 of those still with a dagesh. It's the hard one. Without a dagesh, it's the soft one. In Ashkenazis, they still make a difference between the taf and the saf, right? So with
Sephardic, we're going to focus on the Sephardic.
Yeah, and modern Hebrew, you only do 3 of them: bet, kaf, and pei.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Good knowledge. וכן כל מיני מטעמים ומעדנים נעשים כך. חמת מלא. חמת מלא.
Yeah. A jar full of waste.
Right. So all dainties and delicacies similarly become vessels full of waste. Mm-hmm. Dainties. וכן כל תענוגי העולם הזה, החכם רואה הנולד מהם. שסופן לרכוב ולהיות רימה והשפעה. Likewise, with regard to all pleasures of this world, the wise man foresees what becomes of them. They ultimately rot and become worms and refuse. וההפך, להתענג ולשמוח בהשם, על ידי התבוננות בגדולת אין סוף ברוך הוא כפי יכולתו. Conversely, one should train himself to delight and rejoice in God by reflecting to the best of his ability on the greatness of the blessed Ein Sof. אף שיודע בנפשו שלא יגיע למדרגה זו באמת לאמיתו, כי אם בדמיונות. He may well know that he will not attain this degree of loathing evil and delighting in godliness with the fullest measure of truth, but would only imagine it. אף על פי כן, הוא יעשה את שלו לקיים את השבועה שמשביעים תהי צדק. תהיה צדיק. Nevertheless, he should do his part to uphold the oath administered to him, be a tzaddik. והשם יעשה הטוב בעיניו. And God will do as he sees fit, whether to grant him the level of tzaddik or not. ועוד, furthermore, שההרגל על כל דבר שלטון ונעשה טבע שני, habit reigns supreme in all matters. It becomes second nature. Right? So when you train, when you do that, it starts to become part of your nature.
Exactly.
וכשירגיל למאס את הרע, יהיה נמאס קצת באמת. Therefore, when one accustoms himself to loathe the evil, he will begin to find it truly loathsome to some extent. וכשירגיל לשמוח נפשו בהשם על ידי התבוננות בגדולת השם, and when he accustoms himself to rejoice in God through reflecting on his greatness, הרי בהתערותה דלתתה התערותה דלעילה.
Good.
Shalom.
You actually did pretty well on that Aramaic. Yeah. So itaruta is so in Aramaic, the aleph at the end is like a hey at the beginning. It's the article.
The awakening.
Yeah, the awakening. The itaruta dilatata. Tata is down. Itaruta dila. That you have an awakening when there's an awakening from below, there's an awakening from above.
ואולי וכולי
high, and everything is like that.
ואולי יערה עליו רוח ממרום. So maybe by this effort, a spirit, a ruach from above will descend upon him. ויזכה לבחינת רוח משורש איזה צדיק שתתעבר בו לעבוד השם בשמחה אמיתית. And it will be granted him that the soul level of ruach originating in the soul of some tzaddik will be impregnated in him so that he may serve God with true joy. I feel like he's sneaking in Gilgul over here.
In a sense, so this is why I say that when we talk about Jewish souls, we talk about fractional souls and multiple souls and losing souls and gaining souls, right? So it's possible to gain a part of someone else's soul in that it becomes you make it a part of yourself.
Yeah. כי דכתיב שמחו צדיקים בהשם. Thus it is written, rejoice, O tzadikim, in God. ותתקיים בו באמת השבועה שמשביעים, תהיה צדיק. In this way, the oath charging him to be a tzaddik will be truly fulfilled.
Yep. So we got to the end of the chapter, and while I would love to stay and talk, and you can stay and in fact talk, I have to leave. So I am going to actually leave. Goodbye.
Goodbye. Okay, Tanya, Shalom, this is your chance to come in. But otherwise, unless somebody wants to join or come in, I'm going to also end the broadcast. You're welcome. Cool. Thank you, everybody.